part, which covers the cross-cutting outcomes of the 3 ordinary meetings of the COPs, as well as their simultaneous sessions, to finally conclude on the outcomes of the 6th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Stockholm Convention. So we'll start with some general information about the meetings. As you know, the meetings were really a historical moment in the life of the conventions. That was the first time that the Conference of the Parties of the 3 conventions were held in such a manner, back-to-back with simultaneous sessions. So the 3 characteristics of those meetings are they are composed of individual COP ordinary meetings, as well as simultaneous sessions of the COP ordinary meetings, as well as that they were held back-to-back with the 2nd simultaneous extraordinary meetings of the conventions of the parties. So we have those 3 features to kind of define the 2013 COPs and ExCOPs. In total, 73 decisions were adopted during the 2 weeks meeting. So in total, 26 decisions were adopted for the Basel Convention, 16 decisions were adopted under the Rotterdam Convention, and 30 decisions were adopted for Stockholm. For the ExCOPs, 1 omnibus decision was adopted by the parties. Here on the slide, you can find a picture of the 3 presidents of the Conference of the Parties. You have Mr. Osvaldo Alvarez Perez from Chile, who was the president of the Conference of the Parties to the Stockholm Convention. You have also Mrs. Magdalena Balika from Poland, who was the president of the Conference of the Parties to the Rotterdam Convention. And finally, Mr. Franz Perez from Switzerland, being the president of the Conference of the Parties to the Basel Convention. One of the key features, as mentioned earlier, of those meetings were the simultaneous sessions of the ordinary meetings of the COPs. That was something that was decided by the 3 bureaus jointly, that in addition to the ExCOPs segment, they wanted to go 1 step further and decide to have simultaneous sessions of the ordinary COPs about on those issues that were considered cross-cutting among the 3 conventions. So you can find on the slide the themes or issues that were considered jointly in plenary. So you find technical assistance as well as financial resources. So those issues were considered jointly in plenary for the 3 conventions, Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions. We also had a simultaneous session of the Basel and Stockholm conventions addressing issues on reporting. Another section was also done simultaneously, jointly in plenary on the issue of POPs wastes under Basel Convention and Stockholm Convention. And finally, the issue of compliance was also introduced and discussed jointly during a plenary session, and that was for the 3 conventions. This idea of simultaneous sessions of the ordinary meetings of the COPs was to foster, enhance lessons learned between the 3 conventions, share best practices, and common issues to further advance the synergies and take stock of good practices so that to inform other conventions accordingly. However, those specific issues were discussed separately in contact groups, and the decisions that relate to those issues were taken independently by each meeting of the Conference of the Parties. So we're going to have, for all of those topics, separate decisions for each convention. Regarding the participation, that was also historic. The total of participants attending the meeting sum up to 1,400 participants, so it's really one of the best attendance we ever had for the Conference of the Parties to the conventions. A total of 986 delegates from 172 parties attended the meeting. So you can find on the slide currently showing on the screen all the breakdown of the participation. Here, a slide to refresh our memory or to remind us about how the meetings were structured. So as you know, the meetings took place over a 2-week period. It started with a segment of extraordinary COPs. Then it went on with simultaneous sessions of the ordinary meetings of the COPs for 1.5 days. Then the Stockholm Convention COP meeting started for 3 days, which was then followed by the 11th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Basel Convention. And then another 3 days were dedicated to the 6th meeting of the Rotterdam Convention. Something also that is to be noted is that a high-level segment was organized on Thursday afternoon on 8th of May, as well as Friday 10th of May. The high-level segment was composed of ministerial roundtables, and a total of 82 ministers participated in the high-level segment on those days. And then finally, the last session of the meetings was dedicated to adopt any remaining decisions and close the meetings. All right, so I would like now to turn to the specific outcomes of the ExCOPs 2, the second simultaneous extraordinary meetings of the COP. So as I said previously, only one decision was adopted by the parties to the 3 conventions, which is called omnibus decision. This decision is structured under 7 sections, so you have 7 different sections of the decision that covers different aspects of synergies among the 3 conventions. So we will start with the first section of the decision, which addresses the topic of review arrangements. As you know, the second extraordinary meetings of the COPs were requested to do a review of the synergy arrangements that were decided by the COPs in 2009. Therefore, the meetings had in front of them two reports, a report from the Secretariat as well as a report from the evaluation offices of UNEP and FAO about the impact of the synergy decisions on different levels. So the meetings took note of the 2 reports and decided to adopt a series of recommendations to parties, but also to the Executive Secretary of the Conventions, to UNEP, FAO, as well as other stakeholders. And those recommendations have been annexed to the decision. In addition to the adoption of a series of recommendations on synergies, the meetings also decided to undertake a further review of the synergies arrangements in 2017, so in 2 COPs from now, and that this further review of the synergy arrangements should be based on an independent assessment of the implementation and impact of the joint activities, joint managerial function, as well as joint services at all levels. So a second review of the synergy arrangements will be done in 2017. The parties also requested the Secretariat to prepare options for conducting this second assessment and to be revised by the next COP, that these options for conducting the second review should be considered by the next COPs. So that was the topic of the review of the synergies arrangements. Now I would like to present some of the outcomes on the organization of the secretariats. So the parties of the 3 conventions endorsed the matrix-based management approach that was put forward by the Executive Secretary and adopted also by the UNEP ED. and also approved the organigram of the Secretariat. The organigram was also annexed to the decision. The parties also requested the UNEP Executive Director to undertake a further review of the organization and operation of the Secretariat and to report to the COPs in 2017. Regarding the joint activities, the Conference of the Parties adopted the set of joint activities that was proposed to the parties and that were embedded in the budget. So they approved at this COP a series of joint activities. And they also requested the Secretariat, first of all, to report on those joint activities at the next COP, but also to identify new possible joint activities to further enhance cooperation and coordination among the three conventions. So all of that should be presented to the COPs at their next meetings in 2015. The fourth section of the Omnibus decision concerns the enhanced cooperation and coordination between technical bodies of the conventions. And in that section of the decision, the meetings requested an alignment of working arrangements of the CRC under the Rotterdam Convention and the ones of the POPROC under the Stockholm Convention. This alignment of working arrangements is expected to bring further benefits in terms of mutual information sharing and effective participation of experts and observers at their meetings. A second important decision related to the technical bodies is about the requests that the Secretariat was requested to develop guidance to assist parties to the Rotterdam Convention, as well as to assist the CRC, the Chemical Review Committee, in their work. So to develop guidance to assist them in their work when they work on POPs chemicals. So that's also something to be noted. The decision also encouraged the POPROC to involve experts from the Basel Convention when discussing waste-related issues. So that was it for the technical cooperation, the cooperation between technical committees. Then the section 5 of the Omnibus decision invites or requests the Secretariat to further enhance cooperation and coordination with SAICM in order to contribute to the achievement of the 2020 goal for the sound management of chemicals and wastes. This section of the decision also indicates that the ExCOPs expressed their interests and signaled their readiness to cooperate and coordinate with the Minamata Convention on Mercury. That was in response to the UNEP Governing Council decision 2712. Further, to answer to the request of the Governing Council of UNEP, the Conference of the Parties of the three conventions invited the Conference of the Plenipotentiaries of the Minamata Convention to also consider steps to further cooperate and coordinate on common issues with the three conventions on common issues between the four conventions. So there was also this request to the Conference of the Plenipotentiaries of the Minamata Convention for them to also consider which area that are common to the four conventions that could be further enhanced or coordinated. The Omnibus decision also welcomed the progress made by the Executive Secretary in improving the transparency as well as accountability of the Secretariats with regard to financial and administrative matters. So the decision welcomed the reports that are being prepared by the secretariats on different aspects, financial, staffing reports, and therefore the decision lists all those reports and ask for the executive secretary to continue to prepare those reports for the COPs, for the parties' consideration. So the last section of the omnibus decision relates to the work on facilitating financial resources for chemicals and wastes, and that section also is a response to the UNEP Governing Council decision 2712 and on the integrated framework for chemicals management. And therefore, the COPs welcomed this decision by UNEP to think about this integrated approach for funding chemicals and wastes, and think indeed that the integrated approach is very important, emphasizing the three pillars: the pillar of mainstreaming, the pillar of the private sector involvement, as well as the third pillar, which is the external funding for countries to implement activities on chemicals and waste. So I think I'm missing a slide here, actually. So the fact is, so the COPs, the Conference of the Parties, took note of the meeting that is being planned by countries to define terms of reference for the program, the integrated program that is being called upon by UNEP to strengthen institutional capacity of countries. And therefore, the Conference of the Parties to the three conventions also emphasized that this institutional strengthening at the national level requires attention by the international community. The Conference of the Parties also invited parties to further mainstream the sound management of chemicals and wastes in their national development plans, but also national budgets, as well as any national programs. It further invited industry to be involved in the integrated approach for the sound funding for the funding of chemicals and wastes, and also underlined that the implementation at regional level could be strengthened by the integrated approach, especially making use of regional centers. And that therefore the implementation of the conventions could be further strengthened using this integrated approach. So that was the fifth or seventh section of the decision regarding the omnibus decision that constitutes the outcome of the second simultaneous and extraordinary meetings of the Conference of the Parties. So I will now continue my presentation with a part 3, which will present the outcomes of the simultaneous sessions of the ordinary meetings of the Conference of the Parties. So those are the outcomes of the discussion that started during a plenary session, but that are being adopted independently by each meeting of the Conference of the Parties. So we will find the same topics, cross-cutting topics like technical assistance, financial resources, compliance, POPs waste, reporting. So we will look at the outcomes of the meetings through this angle, through the angle of the cross-cutting issues. And we'll start with technical assistance. So regarding technical assistance, we have basically two clusters of outcomes. One is the outcomes related to the regional centers, and the second cluster relates more to general technical assistance and capacity building. So the first cluster regarding regional centers under the conventions, under the Basel and Stockholm conventions, a methodology was adopted for conducting the evaluation of the Basel and Stockholm regional centers. So a framework for evaluating the centers was adopted. And it was decided that at the next meetings of the Conference of the Parties to the Basel and Stockholm Convention, all the centers, the Stockholm and Basel regional centers, will be evaluated against these methodologies. So that was the two main decisions. Under the Stockholm Convention on the regional centers, we have two other decisions. The one that the BCRC Jakarta was endorsed by the COP to become a Stockholm regional center. So we have a new center under the Stockholm Convention. The second decision under Stockholm for the regional centers is like the 8 centers were reviewed already at this COP and were endorsed for a second period of 2 years that will lead us to the next COP when a more general review of all the regional centers will be done. Yeah, something that I forgot to mention is the methodology was adopted and therefore the evaluation of regional centers will be done every 4 years. So next year, in 2 years' time now, all centers will be evaluated and then their evaluation will be done every 4 years. So this is it for the regional centers part. Then we have the more general technical assistance and capacity building part. In there, similar decisions were adopted for the 3 conventions. For example, it was parties, developing country parties and parties with economies in transition were invited to provide information to the Secretariat about their needs for technical assistance or needs for technology transfer. So this procedure will be now done across the board for the 3 conventions. And a similar invitation was made to developed country parties that they were invited to provide information on their availability of technical assistance and technology to be transferred in developing countries party or countries in economy in transition. So we have now this new, across the board for the 3 conventions, there will be this request for 2 parties to share information on their needs and availability of technical assistance or technology transfer. Also, the 3 Conference of the Parties took note of the harmonized technical assistance program for the 3 conventions, program that has specific components dedicated to each convention or also common parts when technical assistance can be delivered jointly. So here you have a slide showing the different axes of the technical assistance program that will make use of partnerships. Regional centers will also provide capacity building and training, and will make a great use of needs assessment based on the information that is communicated by parties. On financial resources, also that was a cross-cutting theme that was discussed jointly. Most of the decisions are actually related to Stockholm, which is for now the only convention to have a financial mechanism. So we have a series of decisions like the consolidated guidance to the financial mechanism, the needs assessment, for assessing funding needs for the period 2015-19, as well as the report on the 3rd review of the financial mechanism. So all of those documents will be transmitted to the GEF, who is the financial mechanism on an interim basis for the convention, so that this information guidance could be used during the 6th replenishment of the GEF. For Rotterdam and Basel conventions, 2 decisions were taken, one per convention. And the Secretariat was requested to continue its collaboration with relevant partners like the GEF or IOMC organizations to ensure that they streamline, they consider the needs of the conventions when they undertake technical assistance. The other cross-cutting issue that was discussed jointly by the Conference of the Parties was national reporting. So for the Stockholm Convention, the decision related to reporting adopted the revised reporting format. So reporting format that was revised to add the 10 newly listed POPs. And also there is a request for the Secretariat to revise the reporting format to include hexachlorocyclododecane, which was just newly listed by parties at this COP. So those are the two main, let's say, decisions under national reporting for Stockholm. Under the Basel Convention, parties were invited or requested to transmit completed questionnaire for 2011 as well as previous years, and to fill in any data gaps of previous questionnaires for the years 26 as well as following years. Another part of the BC decision on reporting requests the Secretariat to continue to develop new electronic reporting system as it is done under the Stockholm, and also established a small intersessional working group to develop a revised format for reporting that will be considered by the OEWG at its 9th meeting. So the idea with the small international working group, the idea with the revision of the format is to simplify and streamline it. So that would be the mandate of the small intersessional working group. So there was a process by which parties could take part in the small intersessional working group, send their nominations to the Secretariat by the 30th of June, and as well as to volunteer as lead country to supervise the work of the small intersessional working group and the work to revise the reporting format. Otherwise, parties are invited to submit suggestions on how to streamline and simplify the reporting format to the Secretariat by the 30th of September of this year. So the other cross-cutting theme was also on waste, contaminated and containing POPs. So here again, there are cross-cutting themes and benefits that the conventions work together. And for the decision that relates to Basel, the Basel decision extends the mandate of the small intersessional working group, working on the review and updating of technical guidelines on POPs wastes, as well as the preparation of new technical guidelines for new POPs. And so the mandate of the group was extended with new deadlines for comments. A process was established for the revision, and first drafts should be considered by the OEWG at its 9th meeting. In addition to the work on technical guidelines on POPs wastes, the small intersessional working group was invited by the Stockholm Convention COP to review certain new guidance, for example, BAT and BEP on BDE and PFOS, as well as draft inventory guidance documents for BDEs and PFOS. So those 4 documents that were developed under the Stockholm Convention, the parties to the Stockholm Convention forwarded them, asked the Secretariat to forward those documents to the small intersessional working group so that the small intersessional working group could take this guidance into account when doing its work with the review and updating of the technical guidelines, as well as to provide comments on how to improve this guidance being developed under the Stockholm Convention. In addition, as you know, HBCD was listed under the Stockholm Convention, and therefore the Stockholm COP6 invited the appropriate bodies of the Basel Convention, meaning the small intersessional working group, to update technical guidelines currently being developed to include HBCD. On the compliance, the COP of the Basel Convention adopted the recommendations that were put forward by the Implementation and Compliance Committee under the Convention, as well as adopted the program of work of the committee for 2014-2015. The Conference of the Parties also adopted the terms of reference for the Environmental Network for Optimizing Regulatory Compliance on Illegal Traffic, also called ENFORCE. So a new group is being established under the committee to undertake capacity building activities, among others. Regarding compliance for the Stockholm and Rotterdam Conventions, there was no consensus for an adoption of procedures and mechanisms for compliance under Stockholm. Therefore, the outcomes of the work of COP6 will be forwarded to the next COP. And the same happened for the discussion under the Rotterdam Convention. The outcomes of the discussion and work of the past COP, COP6, will be forwarded to the next COP, COP7. In addition to those cross-cutting decisions or themes, other similar decisions were adopted under the 3 conventions for budgets. For example, despite the fact that the budgets are separate, independent, and have been adopted for each convention, the budgets have been presented in one integrated document, which make it easier to read. Then 3 similar decisions were adopted for a process to develop an MOU between UNEP and the Conference of the Parties to the 3 conventions. That's also decisions that are similar in nature. 3 similar decisions have also been adopted on the admission of observers and for the designation of focal points under the 3 conventions. Last but not least, a similar decision was adopted by the 3 meetings of the Conference of the Parties to agree on the next meetings of the COPs, and the next meetings of the COPs will be conducted, will take place back-to-back in Geneva in 2015. This time, it has been requested not to have a high-level segment, and that the meetings are not going to have extraordinary Conference of the Parties. It will be just ordinary meetings of the Conference of the Parties. However, the decision indicates that there could be joint sessions of the Conference of the Parties where appropriate on joint issues. The decision also calls for regional meetings to assist parties in their preparations for the meetings. All right, so I'm now turning to the last part of my presentation, which is on the outcomes of the COP6 of Stockholm Convention. As I mentioned earlier, parties to the Stockholm Convention have agreed to list a new chemical to the convention, which is hexabromocyclododecane. The chemical will be listed in Annex A to the convention with specific exemptions for production and use of extruded and expanded polystyrene in buildings. Another decision that was adopted by parties to the Stockholm Convention is the adoption of a framework for the effectiveness evaluation of the convention under Article 16. As such, a committee was established, committee that would be composed of 14 members. On BDs and PFOS, so two processes were adopted for evaluating the continued need for specific exemptions and acceptable purposes for BDs or PFOS. So those would be two independent processes, one for evaluating specific exemptions of BDs, and then processes for evaluating the continued need for specific exemptions and acceptable purposes for PFOS. Since the evaluation of BDE is going to take place at COP8 in 2015, parties felt that they had time to review, make sure that the information that is collected on BDE is appropriate for conducting the evaluation. Therefore, they decided to review the format for collecting information on BDEs. And for that, they established a small intersessional working group. And similar to other small intersessional working groups established under Basel, they decided that nominations from parties to take part in the group should be sent to the Secretariat by the end of June. Excuse me. I need to drink some water. Excuse me for that. All right. I hope I can continue. It's still a bit. All right. So on BDs and PFOS, so that was the first part of the decision. The second part took note of the recommendations by the POPROC the COP then took note of the recommendations made by the POPROC on the alternatives to PFOS in open applications, and therefore also encourage parties to implement the recommendations as relevant for them. On DDT, parties concluded that DDT may still be needed in some countries that rely on DDT for vector disease control, and therefore decided to conduct another assessment for the continued need of DDT at the next COP. The COP also took note of the assessment made by the POPROC on alternatives to DDT. It also invited UNEP, in consultation with WHO, the DDT expert group under the convention, as well as the Secretariat, to prepare a roadmap for the development of DDT alternatives. On best available techniques and best environmental practices, the COP adopted the work plan of the BAT&BEP expert group. And as mentioned before, under POPs waste, the COP requested the Secretariat to forward the waste-related content of the draft BAT&BEP on PFOS and BDE to the relevant bodies of the Basel Convention. On national implementation plans, the parties encourage the COP encouraged parties to use the updated guidance as well as additional guidance that was prepared for updating NIPS with newly listed POPs, and ask the Secretariat to forward the draft inventory guidance on BDEs and PFOS to the Basel Convention. On the Persistent Organic Pollutant Committee, the COP took note that the 9th meeting of the POPROC will be held back-to-back with the 9th meeting of the CRC from the 14th to the 25th of October 2013 in Rome. And that in between the two meetings, there would be a joint session organized to share information, to exchange information on scientific information. The COP requested the POPROC to prepare a report on evaluating the benefits of the back-to-back meetings with the CRC and POPROC for the next COP. In addition, 7 parties. I mean, there was a rotation of the membership of the POPROC. Therefore, 17 parties were identified by the COP to nominate new members to start their terms of office next year in May, 5th of May 2014, for 4 years. Regarding the chair of the POPROC, it was decided that POPROC 9 will identify a chair on an interim basis that will start chairing at POPROC 10, and that the person will be confirmed by the Conference of the Parties at its 7th meeting. Regarding the subject of endosulfan, which was listed at COP5, the COP took note of the reports prepared by the POPROC on chemical and non-chemical alternatives to endosulfan, and invited parties to consider those reports when introducing alternatives to endosulfan. Regarding the toolkit, parties welcomed the revised toolkit for calculation of emissions of dioxin and furans, and recommended parties to use it. The toolkit, as you know, has been revised not only right now to relate to dioxin and furans, but also to relate to all the chemicals, non-intentionally produced chemicals, listed in Annex C. As well as the revised toolkit also included new emission factors that were not included before. Toolkit experts and the Secretariat were invited to continue and contribute to training activities to parties to use the revised toolkit. On the global monitoring plan, the COP welcomed the updated guidance on GMP and the first result of the human milk survey. Sorry again. Sorry for that. I really have difficulty to speak now. I'm not sure I will make it. Maybe I can come back to the slide later, if you don't mind. Thank you very much. Sorry for that. I'm back. That would be very bad that I cannot present this last slide. So those are the other decisions that have been adopted by the Stockholm COP. On exemptions, a format was adopted for submitting specific exemptions on endosulfan. A template was also adopted by the COP when there is trade with non-parties. On PCBs, it was just reminding parties as well as the Secretariat that there will be an evaluation on the progress made for the evaluation of PCBs at the next meeting. Also requesting the Secretariat to prepare a report for that. And also another decision related to institutional arrangements, like 5 members of the bureaus will go to the meetings of the joint bureau. Okay, sorry for all of that. I have to stop because anyway, it's the end of my presentation and I'm really losing my voice. Thank you so much for your attention. Thanks.
Thank you, Marilyn, very much for the presentation. I hope you will get soon better. Now, we would now like to welcome questions from the participants, and we will leave you a few minutes to think about the questions you would like to ask. To send a question by chat, please remember that you need to open your chat window. You can also raise your hand and I will give you the floor in the order of appearance. In that case, please remember to unmute your microphone and then mute it back after our exchange. We will mute ourselves during this short period. Okay, I have already 2 questions. And the first question is from Cristina Navarro. The regional centers do what with regards to the conventions? These are not in every country. One more time.
Thank you very much for this question. Well, I don't have in front of me the exact terms of reference for the regional centers, though they have different mandates under Basel and Stockholm conventions. Maybe after the meeting I can send an email with all the details about the mandate and the scope of the work of the regional centers. But indeed, regional centers are not in every country because they are supposed to cover a region to provide assistance, capacity building, as well as technical assistance to countries of a region. So they are really expected to help many countries, depending of the region, and therefore they are there really to serve parties. And parties can contact them for projects or for assistance on certain issues. And they are really having this objective of helping parties from a region, if you want. I hope I've answered the question.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn. Then there is another question, also from Cristina Navarro. She says, I'm also interested in information on how Minamata will affect Basel. Not sure if this is evident yet, but I am currently trying to understand how this will interact.
Thank you very much for this interesting question. For now, really, the decision is in the hands of the Conference of the Plenipotentiaries of the Minamata Convention. This is for them to decide the steps they want to take to coordinate, to further coordinate or cooperate with the conventions. There is already some work ongoing between the 2 conventions for waste contaminated by mercury. As you know, there was already technical guidelines developed on mercury waste that were considered by the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, and I believe this cooperation on wastes will continue. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any other questions to all of participants? If you have a question, you can raise your hand or write me a message in the chat. Okay. Helena? Ah, yes, okay. Helena, no, Jimena, sorry. Jimena, you have the floor. You can say your question.
Thank you, Anja. I was wondering, it wasn't clear for me whether the mercury guidelines, the guidelines for mercury waste were adopted at the COP or they need still some further work. Can you clarify that for me? Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So the Basel technical guidelines on mercury waste were adopted at the 10th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Basel Convention. And at this COP, they agreed to amend them, and for that they have set up an intersessional working group that will work on revising the technical guidelines on mercury wastes. But further information will be given on that topic in the second presentation that will be presented by my colleague Alan in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, I will now pass the floor to Alan Wittig, who will make the second presentation. Wait. Yeah, a moment. I will put the second presentation.
Okay, now it's working. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I will now walk you through the next main presentation of this webinar, which covers the main outcomes of the 11th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Basel Convention, also the 6th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Rotterdam Convention. This presentation will also give you some highlights from the high-level segments, in addition to a few slides on follow-up activities. So the presentation is structured in these four broad parts that I just described now. So I'll start with part one on the outcomes of the Basel Convention COP11. As noted previously, the Basel COP11 adopted in total 26 decisions, some of which have been already covered in the previous presentation, so I will not go over those again, and I'll just focus on the remaining main outcomes of this COP. So on this first slide, the first slide covers the decision on the follow-up to the country-led initiative to improve the effectiveness of the Basel Convention. And this decision was adopted. It was sort of an omnibus type decision with three main sections to it. The first section covers the entry into force of the ban amendments, and the COP11 acknowledged the new ratifications, and the COP11 also requested the Secretariat to continue to assist parties upon requests which are having difficulties in ratifying the ban amendment. The section 2 of this main decision on the CLI, follow-up to the CLI, was regarding the framework for the environmentally sound management of hazardous waste and other wastes. And this framework was presented to COP11 and was adopted by COP11, together with some recommendations, a list of follow-up actions that are annexed to that decision. Also, in this section of the decision, an expert working group was established and mandated to, on the one hand, work intercessionally on these follow-up actions, and secondly, to develop a program of work for considering any additional priorities. This program of work, together with the reports on activities of this group, will be submitted to the 9th meeting of the open-ended working group for its consideration, and then to COP12 for possible adoption. The expert working, in terms of the composition of the expert working group, each regional group has been requested to nominate 5 members with relevant expertise by 30th of June 2013, so in a couple of weeks, and this should be done through its bureau member. The third section of this omnibus type decision on this follow-up to CLI covers the aspects of further legal clarity, and a draft glossary of terms was actually presented to COP11 but was not adopted by COP11. And in this decision, a small intersessional working group was established with a mandate to basically complete this glossary, further work on this glossary, and by, amongst others, examining glossaries from other existing guidance documents and technical guidelines, and to propose a series of recommendations in that regard. These revised draft of the revised glossary, together with these recommendations and observations, is to be submitted to the OEWG9 for its consideration, and then to COP12 for possible adoption. Nominations of experts to this small intersessional working group are to be submitted to the Secretariat by 30 June 2013, including nominations for a lead country to lead the work of this group. On technical guidelines, so you heard in the previous presentation a summary of the outcomes of the decision on the technical guidelines on POPs wastes. Two other decisions were adopted on technical guidelines. The first one on technical guidelines on the transboundary movement of electronic and electronic wastes. And these guidelines were presented to COP11 but were not adopted. And the decision establishes a process whereby the already existing small intersessional working group needs to continue its work, and parties and others are invited to further nominate experts or update their nominations to this group by 30th of June 2013, including the nominations of a lead country, and the deadline for this is 31st of July 2013. In terms of its mandate, the small intersessional working group is requested to prepare draft revised technical guidelines on e-waste by 30th of November for comments by parties and others. And the revised technical guidelines, taking into account these comments, are to be submitted to the OEWG9 for its consideration. On mercury waste, so you already heard some information from the previous session. Basically, COP11 decided to include the updating of the technical guidelines on mercury waste that were adopted by COP10 in the program of work of the OEWG for 2014 and 2015. And parties, again, are invited to nominate experts to this small intersessional working group that had been previously established by COP9 for the updating of these guidelines, and the nominations are due in by 30th of June 2013. And Japan has offered to be the lead country of this group. The updated technical guidelines from the work of this small intersessional working group will be posted on the website by 31st of December for comments by parties, due in by the 31st of March 2014, and then for consideration by OEWG9. On the next slide, there is some information on a decision adopted on the Partnership for Action on Computer Equipment, PACE. And in that regard, a guidance document on the environmentally sound management of the used and end-of-life computing equipment was presented to COP11 for adoption, and its sections 1, 2, 4, and 5 were adopted. Its section 3 was not adopted, and this was to avoid duplication and any discrepancies with the work ongoing on the technical guidelines on e-waste. And this section covers the transboundary movement of used and end-of-life computing equipment. Also in this decision, the mandate of the PACE group was extended until the end of 2015 in order for it to complete its work program for the period 2014 and 2015. Another decision was adopted on the amendments to the Annex 9 to the Basel Convention. 3 new entries were put forward to COP11 for its consideration. 2 of them were adopted, so it's the entry B3026 and B3027. But further work was required on the third entry B3025, and this work is included in the program of work of the open-ended working group for the period 2014-2015. Also, in this decision, parties and others are invited to submit comments to the Secretariat by 30 October 2013 for consideration by the OEW G9. A decision was also adopted on institutional arrangements, and in this decision, the expanded bureau as a subsidiary body of the convention is discontinued. The composition of the bureau is modified and now is of the following. It's composed of 1 president and 9 vice presidents. The functions of the expanded bureau are to be undertaken now by the bureau. And in terms of participation in the joint bureau meetings of the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm conventions, 5 members from this 10-member bureau will participate. An additional decision was taken on the open-ended working group. And in this decision, the work program for the next biennium of this group was adopted, and this work program includes a number of new mandates requested from COP11. Also, this decision defines the actual sort of format or duration of the next meeting of the OEWG, which will take place over 4 days. Of which 2 days will include interpretation, and another 2 days will be in English only. In terms of future institutional arrangements, parties and others are invited to submit to the Secretariat their comments on different options, for the future institutional arrangements of this group. And this is to be done by the 31st of October 2013. Following which, the Secretariat is to prepare a document analyzing possible options of these arrangements, and this should be presented to the OEWG9 for its consideration. After which, the OEWG9 is to submit these recommendations to the COP12 for its consideration. The following slide is essentially the last slide covering this part 1 on the Basel outcomes, Basel Convention COP outcomes, and lists a number of decisions very briefly, and I'll walk you through them. The first one listed here is on the strategic framework. In this decision, the COP11 took note of the reports on the creation of a baseline for the midterm and final evaluations. And in this decision, parties are invited to provide information for 2011 on the indicators listed in section 5 of a decision adopted by COP10, and this is to be provided by 30th of September 2013 using an electronic questionnaire that was developed by the Secretariat and was previously distributed to all parties on 7th of November 2012. In this decision, also the Secretariat is requested to submit a baseline report to the OEWG9 and also to prepare a report on the midterm evaluation of the strategic framework to COP13. A decision was also adopted on the cooperation between the Basel Convention and the International Maritime Organization, in which the COP took note of the revised legal analysis on the application of the Basel Convention to hazardous waste and other waste generated on board ships, and the conclusions that are contained in this analysis. And the Secretariat is requested to continue its cooperation with IMO and to develop a guidance manual on how to improve the sea-land interface. A further decision was adopted on the implementation of Decision 532 on the enlargement of the scope of the trust fund to assist developing in other countries. In this decision, the section procedures of the interim guidelines for the implementation of Decision 532 were amended, and the Secretariat was requested to make further proposals to the next meeting, the next COP12, on possible further changes to improve the effectiveness of these procedures. And finally, the Secretariat was also requested to consider its role in capacity building activities relevant to the prevention and preparedness of countries to deal with such emergencies. On the environmentally sound dismantling of ships, a decision was adopted on this topic, in which the Secretariat is requested to develop further programs for sustainable ship recycling with IMO and with ILO, and to continue to follow the developments in relation to the Hong Kong conventions. And finally, a decision was also adopted on national legislation, notifications, enforcement of the convention, and efforts to combat illegal traffic. And the Secretariat is requested to undertake a number of activities or continue a number of activities to prevent and combat illegal traffic. And also the parties are urged to fulfill their obligations in relation to this topic. So this now concludes excuse me, I'm going a bit fast. This concludes now the presentation on the outcomes, the main outcomes from the Basel COP11. I will now, in the next few slides, in the part 2 of this presentation, brief you on the main outcomes of the 6th meeting of the COP to the Rotterdam Convention. So firstly, chemicals were added to the convention. So based on the recommendations of the Chemical Review Committee, 4 new chemicals were listed to the Annex 3 of the Rotterdam Convention, and these are the azinphosmethyl, the commercial pentabromodiphenyl ether, commercial octabromodiphenyl ether, and PFOS and its related compounds. For each of these listed chemicals, a decision guidance document, a DGD, was also adopted. For the next COP, COP7, 2 chemicals will be considered, as no consensus could be reached at COP6, and these are chrysotile asbestos and the liquid formulations containing paraquat dichloride. These 2 chemicals, then no consensus to list these chemicals to Annex 3 was reached, and they will be reconsidered for listing at the next COP, COP7 in 2015. A decision was also adopted on the Chemical Review Committee, whereby it is decided that CRC9 will be held back-to-back with the Stockholm Convention POPs Review Committee, the POPROC 9, from the 14th to the 25th of October 2013, and this will take place in Rome, and a joint session of the 2 committees will be organized. Following this, the evaluation of this experience and the benefits gained of holding these back-to-back meetings will be undertaken. Also, the decision appoints 14 designated experts as new CRC members, and the terms of office of the current 17 members is extended, and this is in order for them to be able to serve on CRC 9, which was pushed back in time in order to have it held back to back with the Stockholm POC meeting. Finally, an interim chair is to be identified by CRC 9, who will start chairing at CRC 10, and this chair needs to be confirmed by COP 7. On the implementation of the Rotterdam Convention, a couple of decisions were adopted, whereby parties are encouraged to exchange information by submitting notifications of FRAs for banned or severely restricted chemicals. Exporting and importing parties are requested to fully implement the Article 12 by sending export notifications and by acknowledging receipt of these. And finally, the Secretariat was requested to prepare and send questionnaires to collect information on exports and export notification. So this now concludes the section, or the part 2, on the main outcomes from the Rotterdam COP6. And the next few slides cover the results or the main outcomes from the high-level segment. So first of all, a few facts. The theme of the high-level segment was synergies and the implementation of the chemicals and waste conventions at the national, regional, and global levels. The high-level segment opened on Thursday, 9th May in the afternoon, and a number of opening speeches in plenary were provided. This opening was followed by round table discussions where in fact 82 ministers and vice ministers met in 9 panels. So around these 9 tables, and these were organized according to language preference. And a summary of these discussions was presented in plenary the next day, the Friday 10th of May, together with the Geneva Statement on the sound management of chemicals and waste. And in terms of other events that took place during the high-level segment, a ceremony on the ban amendment took place, and a ministerial dinner also. The next few slides present to you briefly some of the key messages coming out of these panel discussions, high-level segment panel discussions. But first, I'd like to note that the full reports containing the more detailed list of messages is available for download on the convention's website, and in a few slides the actual URL will be provided. So you are welcome to go and consult the report and read it in more detail. I'll, however, just point out a few of the key messages. First of all, by indicating that these messages were structured around 4 broad themes. The first covering the synergies in general, the second covering long-term needs, the third covering aspects with regard to delivery, and the fourth on future policy making. So on the first one, just to give you a few examples of the key messages, synergies was considered to be a continuing process, and implying coherence in the environmental and development agenda. That synergies should encompass all sectors such as the environment, economy, health, trade, transport. Should be an incentive to set up national committees to manage chemicals and hazardous waste, and should lead to resource mobilization for encouraging green industry. Another message, for instance, is that strengthened regional cooperation, fosters exchanges of ideas, and discussion of problems and sharing of good practices. In terms of the second theme on long-term needs, just to give you a few examples, some of the key messages were that the synergies approach should have a broad context, encompassing other existing and future instruments and programs, such as the future Minamata Convention, SciCam, or ozone instruments. And another example is that industry could be encouraged to implement environmentally sound practices, or again, that electronic waste was identified as an issue of growing concern. In terms of the third broad theme on delivery, just to cite a few examples, they identified the need to enhance public awareness, information exchange, transfer of knowledge, skills, and experience at the regional and international level, including through the South-South cooperation. It was also considered important that regional centers should be further strengthened, and the need for capacity building to assist in the coordination and cooperation at the national level was also highlighted. In terms of the fourth main theme, on future policy making, again, just to give you a few examples, some of the key messages that came out were the following. For example, need for a common understanding of hazardous wastes, chemicals and wastes, that there would be a need for an integration of the mandates and functions of the chemicals and waste conventions at the national level. This was considered as important. And another example is that they considered that it was vital to work with the civil society at the national level for successful implementation of measures targeted at chemicals and waste. So here you see in red below well, in fact in blue under the red text, the link to the full report containing the ministerial outcomes of these roundtable discussions. Now I'm moving on to the fourth and final part of my presentation, which provides you some key information on follow-up activities to these meetings. So first of all, a series of follow-up letters are being sent out that contain a number of information requests from parties, and these will be sent out for each convention. And in fact, the process has already begun, given that you've heard in the previous slides a number of deadlines are approaching. For instance, for the nominations to certain working groups, these deadlines are approaching by 30th of June. So a first set of letters has been mailed out, others are being mailed out as we speak, and then a second phase, another set of letters will be sent out later this year, containing all the remaining information requests containing all these decisions, and this is meant to assist parties in providing this information to the Secretariat. The meeting reports are being worked on and being finalized as we speak, and there will be four meeting reports, one for each convention and one for the ExCOPs. It is estimated that the advanced English copy will be of these reports will be available within 2 to 3 weeks, and you can note that each adopted decision will be annexed to these reports, so that's when they will all be available. And the final copy, the final versions of these reports in all 6 UN languages will be available in approximately 3 to 4 months. This slide is meant to sort of recap a little bit on all the working groups, intersessional working groups that were established in these various decisions. As you can see, a number of them were established. So This is to help you sort of recap. And a lot were established under the Basel Convention, starting with the experts working group, which falls under the follow-up to the CLI decision, specifically on the ESM framework. And just as a reminder, each regional group is requested to nominate 5 members with relevant expertise through its bureau member, and this should be done by 30 June 2013. Also, a small intersessional working group was established to follow up on the legal clarity aspects of this CLI decision. And here parties are invited to nominate experts and to inform the secretariats of these nominations by 30 June 2013, including nomination of lead country. Another small intersessional working group was established on the technical guidelines on e-waste, and parties and others are invited to further nominate experts who update the nominations and inform the Secretariat by 30 June 2013, and a lead country is invited to nominate itself by 31st of July 2013. In fact, this is not a newly established group. It's a group that was established at COP10, for which the mandate has been extended. On the further work on the technical guidelines on mercury waste, a small intersessional working group was also established and or continued, and parties and others are to nominate experts and inform the secretariats of these by 30 June 2013. And Japan has offered to be the lead country. Another group, a small intersessional working group, was also established its mandate was basically, how should I say, further continued to work on the technical guidance on POPs waste, and the decision does not request any new notifications, so it's essentially the same group continuing its work in the next biennium. And a small intersessional working group on national reporting was established, and parties are invited to nominate experts and inform the Secretariat by 30 June, including nomination for a lead country. And finally, under Basel, the mandate of the PACE working group was extended to 2015. And under the Stockholm Convention, one small intersessional working group was established, and its mandate was to review the draft format for submission of information for the evaluation and review of BDEs. And again, parties are invited to nominate experts and inform the Secretariat by 30 June, including a lead country. So hopefully this slide gives you a good recap of the work of all these groups. Now, the last few slides of my presentation cover the various elections that took place during the meetings. All this information is presented and available on the convention's website. So again, I invite you to go consult our web pages in that regard and download the information as needed. So these are just a short recap, so I'll only pass briefly on these few slides. So I'll start with the election of officers to the COP10 Basel Bureau. And Mr. Andrzej Jakuszewicz from Poland was elected as president, together with 9 vice presidents that you can see on the slide. I'll leave it just a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds. Okay. With regard to the other bodies of the Basel Convention, the next bureau for the OEWG was also elected, with 2 co-chairs, 2 vice chairs, and a rapporteur. The 5 new members to the ICC, the Implementation and Compliance Committee, were also elected. And as was previously mentioned in the previous presentation, members of this new network Enforce were also elected. So I'll leave it a couple of seconds for you to see this. In terms of the election of officers to the Rotterdam COP7 Bureau, Mr. Mohamed Gashashni from Jordan was elected as president, together with 4 vice presidents shown on the screen. And also parties were identified to nominate new CRC members. And these are shown in the table here on the slide, noting that the Secretariat has received most of the actual names of experts from these parties, with the exception of the region of Grulac, and the Secretariat is in contact with these countries to receive the name of these experts. In terms of the election of officers to the Stockholm COP7 Bureau, Ms. Joanna Liesinger-Weitz from Sweden was elected as president of the Stockholm COP7 Bureau, together with 9 vice presidents as shown on this slide. Just leave it a couple of seconds. And finally, a number of parties were identified to nominate this time new pop rock members. And for each region, you see the parties that were identified. And again, the Secretariat has received just about all names of these experts. 1 or 2, I believe, are still missing for the countries listed under the Grulac region. But again, the Secretariat is actively and proactively contacting Grulac to get these names. So this should be done very shortly. This concludes the presentation. Just a final point on the elections, as I indicated earlier. All of this information is available on the website, and here you also have the websites, the URL to our websites, where you have also some other background information for you to consult. So thank you very much. This concludes my presentation.